Today's episode of Brews and the Boys is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/brewsandtheboys. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Prepare your ears for a Waffle Butt Media podcast.
Welcome to the Brews and the Boys podcast. We are your neighborhood bar podcast. We drink cold beverages and we talk about America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. Every week we will be giving you an in-depth look into everything the Cowboys are doing and what we can expect from the boys. My name is Michael Sisemore. I've been following and writing about the Cowboys for many years and currently contribute to Blogging the Boys. You may follow me on Twitter at Mr. Sisemore and follow the podcast at Brews and the Boys. With me, as always, is my producer and football illiterate sidekick, Timmy Two-Step.
Hey, everybody.
And that's all that you're going to be hearing from Timmy Two-Step, because let me just tell you, today is one of the most awful days in the world because the Philadelphia Eagles hoisted a Lombardi trophy and are now Super Bowl champions. And during the Super Bowl watching party that we had, our producer, Timmy Two-Step, he let me know something. One, I already knew that he was born and raised, well, not born and raised, but he was born in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is a little outside Philadelphia area. But during the middle of the game, he could no longer cheer for the New England Patriots and decided that
in the first place.
And he decided that he was going to cheer for the Philadelphia Eagles, and they won, which should have his Dallas Cowboys card revoked. But I will say this:
I hate the fans.
He hates the fans, so he's. I get it. Nobody wants to see the Patriots win again. But because of this, we had decided to change our entire format. And Timmy Two-Step now is going to be mainly just a producer because we are changing things on this show here. We want to give you the best show that we possibly can. And for us to do that, we need Timmy Two-Step to focus on most of the production aspects of this show. He still will be around, and he still... Yeah, his apparition will be floating around in the room. He'll still be around, and every now and then we'll pop in with something to say. But we're actually going to start having guests on every single week, guests that we could talk about the Cowboys and what's going on with the Dallas Cowboys. And there are going to be lots of guests that are very informed about the Cowboys and will be able to give us their in-depth look at what they think is going on and how the Cowboys are going to get better going forward here in the 2018 season. So today, we're actually going to have a very special guest, Tom Ryle from Blogging the Boys. He's a good friend of mine, a colleague of mine, and it'll be nice to talk with Tom and catch up with him on what he thinks about the Super Bowl and what he thinks about the Cowboys going forward. We're going to talk about the coaching hires and things of that nature in this episode, and we're going to talk about a lot of just what the hoopla and everything that's been going on so far with these coaching hires and what we can expect that their effect will be going forward. So when we get to Tom Ryle, we'll mainly let him give you his 411 on what he believes will be the better hires and things of that nature for the Dallas Cowboys. And but we do have to talk a little bit about this Eagles winning the Super Bowl thing here quickly. And as the Cowboys, as the Dallas Cowboys, they have 5 Super Bowl championships, and if the Patriots would have won last night, the Patriots would have eclipsed the Dallas Cowboys by having 6 Super Bowl championships, tying the Steelers. So, in some ways, the Cowboys are still one of the better, definitely one of the better organizations in football. But a lot of folks after the Super Bowl, rightfully so, are going to feel very, just very discouraged about how the season went and how they had to watch their worst rival, probably the Philadelphia Eagles, win the Super Bowl. And we understand how horrible Eagles fans really are because we've dealt with Eagles fans before, and we just know that all you needed to look at the news stations from Philadelphia coming out today and all the looting that was done at stores and things. When your team wins, I just think you really need to it should be a time that you embrace your city, that you guys all, especially somewhere like Philadelphia where they haven't won anything in 60 years. They haven't won a championship since it was still the NFL championship in 1960, which was the same year the Cowboys became a team, so became a franchise. So we would say act like you've been there before, but they had never been there before. But it just goes to show you everyone was correct in their assessment about the Eagles. Last night, when they won the Super Bowl, they just started trashing their town, and that's...
I didn't have to wait 2 hours to see a video of something burning, just FYI.
No, you could look on Twitter.
The Super Bowl ending to 12:15 at night when I went to sleep.
I have quite a few. Tim and I know quite a few Cowboys fans that live in the Pennsylvania area. They have seen it even worse than we have. So this is the Eagles. This is what they do. Instead of taking that moment to embrace in your city's culture and stuff, they start looting convenience stores and trashing things and throwing food around, saying this is all free. This is all free, and that's just not right. That's just really not right. And so we try to say, act like you've been there before. Act like you've had a championship. They never have. And this is why they don't deserve good things. And this is why we have always been very honest on our hatred for the Philadelphia Eagles and why they don't deserve good things. So when we're going to bring Tom Ryle in here in just a moment, and we're going to discuss these coaching staff changes and making sense of just these Cowboys' new coaching hires, because the Cowboys, if you know, they have, since we last been with you, sorry about our hiatus, but we needed to take a hiatus for some personal reasons, but since we've been with you, the Cowboys finished the season 9-7. They beat the Eagles in the last game of the season. It didn't really matter. They missed the playoffs by one game after losing to the Seattle Seahawks on Christmas Eve. The Seattle Seahawks all they needed to do was win and get in, and they lost their game. So both the Cowboys and Seahawks sat on the outside. As the postseason has come along, went along, the Cowboys have started making a lot of coaching hire changes. Now, it's not going to change at the top. Jason Garrett is still your head coach. Scott Linehan is still your offensive coordinator. And your defensive coordinator is still Rod Marinelli. But they're going to have a new tight ends coach soon. But they have hired a new offensive line coach, which is Paul Alexander, who used to coach the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line for 25 plus years. They have kept running backs coach Gary Brown. They have hired a new wide receivers coach. It's going to be Sanjay Lal. He was the wide receivers coach had a few stops. He was with the Jets. I think he might have been with Buffalo, and he was with the Colts most recently. Then they have also hired some defensive coaches that we're going to get into as well. They've hired their quarterbacks coach is going to be Kellen Moore for the offense, by the way. Kellen Moore was the former Cowboys backup. Now he's going to be the quarterback's coach. He's going to retire and assume that role. On defense, they have hired Chris Richard to take over the passing game coordinator, and he's going to be the secondary coach. As we're also going to see that Matt Eberflus, linebackers coach, is leaving, so his spot will be taken by another Cowboys assistant, Ben Bloom, that's been there for quite a while. And Keith O'Quinn will be the special teams coordinator, as former special teams coordinator Rich Bisaccia has taken a job with John Gruden in the Oakland Raiders staff. So we're going to get into these coaching changes. We're going to ask Tom Ryle what he feels about it, how he feels about these coaching changes, and what he believes is the better moves, maybe moves that he didn't really get, but we will be getting to that here in a moment. The Cowboys finished the season 9-7. It's unfortunate. They watched the Eagles hoist the Lombardi and beat the Patriots, but it does mean that every single team in the NFC East has now won a Super Bowl. They are the only division in football where every team has won a Super Bowl. So we're going to be talking about the coaching staff and things of that nature today, and we're going to try to forget about the fact that the Eagles hoisted the Lombardi, and we will be right back with you. And on the other side, we're going to talk to Tom Ryle.
Today's episode of Brews and the Boys is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/brewsandtheboys. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
And we are back, and on the line right now, we have Blogging the Boys writer, front page writer Tom Ryle. You can find him on Twitter at Tom Ryle BTB. Before we get into the discussion of the coaching changes, we definitely have to get Tom's opinion about the Eagles hoisting a Lombardi and now being Super Bowl champions. So, Tom, I know you said that you just tried not to think about it, but what was going through your mind last night when the Eagles became world champions?
Just how sad it was, really, as a Cowboys fan. We're losing all the great memes about the empty trophy cases and everything, but mostly it's not that I dislike the team, because they built a really great roster, and Pedersen did a great job. Is it Pedersen or Peterson?
It's Peterson. It's Peterson.
Peterson, okay.
Yeah.
I've never really listened to how it was pronounced, so thank you. He did a tremendous job. Significant thing, he clearly outcoached Bill Belichick in that game.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's a major accomplishment. But, we're going to talk a little bit about that later on with one of the topics you want to go over. But it's the Philly fan base that drives you crazy.
It is. I mean, there's nobody has anything against Carson Wentz or anything against Nick Foles.
No.
Nick Foles is from Austin, where I live. We have nothing against Nick Foles, but nobody has anything against the team that they have created. It's not the team that upsets you; it's the fans that upset you, because they, like I say multiple times, this is a city that really doesn't deserve anything nice. And right before we got you on the line, we had just mentioned about, you don't have to go very far. You can look all over Twitter. It's all over the internet about how Philly has trashed their own city.
And actually ate horse poop.
Oh, no
Does
way.
that not kind of sum it up? Yeah. On Twitter video, some guy picked up some horse poop from a police-mounted officer, from his horse, obviously, and ate it on camera.
My
thing I saw on
God.
Twitter this morning.
Escaped me completely.
Oh my God. It's funny that, because Tim and I were talking before this, we said, act like you've been there before, but this is a team that hasn't won a Super Bowl ever, and they haven't been NFL champions since 1960, which was the first year the Cowboys were ever even a franchise. So they haven't won anything, and it's incredible that you're telling me right now that some Philadelphia Eagles fan picked up horse excrement and ate it. That just
Another guy was drinking booze out of a plunger.
Just what is the city of Philadelphia it's just insane what these fans like. These fans are incredible to me, and incredibly shameful. Just awful.
And they were already the most obnoxious fan base in the NFL.
And
oh my gosh, this is going to be a long year.
Oh, I know. If the Cowboys don't sweep them, it's going to be. If the Cowboys need to sweep them this year, just to put them back in their place.
Yes.
Maybe we need to have another 2009 situation where both the Cowboys and Eagles make the playoffs, and the Cowboys have beat them twice in the regular season and then beat them again in the playoffs, like Tony Romo was able to do in 2009 against Donovan McNabb.
Not too far-fetched a scenario, but we'll have to see.
Definitely not when you think about the Nick Foles and Carson Wentz situation. Carson Wentz, it's unfortunate that he tears his ACL and LCL just 2 weeks before the postseason. And we know, as football fans here and as football enthusiasts, yourself and I, Tom, we know that Carson Wentz is not going to be ready for the opening of the season, I would not think.
There's a lot of questions being asked about who will be starting, how long will the situation last, does Philadelphia roll the dice, because they could probably dangle Nick Foles out there and get some really nice compensation.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
If you think about how you think Nick Foles here, they said, I was reading this today as a statistic, that Nick Foles was statistically better in the playoffs than Carson Wentz has had in his entire 2-year career. Like, he had a better games in the playoffs than Carson Wentz was able to have, even including this season, where Carson Wentz kind of lit the game on fire. You're talking about Nick Foles threw for like 400 yards, had 3 touchdowns, or almost 400 yards. It was 373 yards, 3 touchdowns, and also the one thing I did like in that game, Tom, if you didn't catch it, was the Patriots tried to do a trick play that they have done before where they give the ball to a receiver and throw it to Tom Brady, and they didn't get it. And then the Eagles did and scored a touchdown.
I thought that was you can't tell me that Peterson wasn't doing just a little bit in your face to the head coach across the way.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And that's what comes down to it when you said that, like you said before, they outcoached New England, and that's true. Doug Peterson was very much, people. It's kind of refreshing to watch a coach be a little aggressive, and he was aggressive. And today he said he kind of took a stab that people kind of put at the Cowboys. I don't think it really was that, but he says if you coach conservatively, that's how you go to 8-8, and coaching aggressively will get you into the Super Bowl. And I think going up against Bill Belichick, most teams end up out coaching themselves. But here, the Doug Peterson said, no, we're going to stay on the Patriots. We're going to keep putting up points. Their defense is not going to stop us. I mean, the Eagles scored 43 points or 41 points? I can't remember, but it was over 40 points against the New England Patriots, and it looked very much like the game that the Patriots got beat in the first week against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yes. That's the fact that the Patriots got as far as they did, I think, is it was what Belichick did for them, because their roster had some issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what happened with him, and what was the name of the defensive back that he didn't put in the game?
Malcolm Butler.
Butler. I was trying to come up with the last name there for a second. Yeah, that is a story I don't know if we're ever going to know, but if there's a mistake there,
Yeah. He's definitely...
We'll probably circle back to that in a few minutes here.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and get into it because I know we're tired of talking much about the Eagles, but we're going to get into the Cowboys moves. Before you came on, Tom, we were talking about just giving some names of the coaches that the Cowboys have changed to. So we're going to go and just we're going to start with a little Q&A session with Tom Ryle here. This is Tom Ryle from Blogging the Boys, front page writer. You can find him on Twitter at TomRyleBTB. So do you believe that shaking up the coaching staff was necessary for the Cowboys, Tom?
Yes, and this is kind of, one of the things I like to do is try to read the tea leaves. There seems to be some problems, that there was a feeling that there was a disconnect going on between the coaching staff at the level of the coordinators and the players, and the team seems to have put the blame for that on some of the assistant coaches. Additionally, we now know that Dooley and Eberflus were headed out the door anyway.
Yeah.
When you get offered a job like Eberflus apparently is going to get, you can't really turn that down. Dooley was apparently maneuvering himself for quite some time. And then it seems that the team had more of issues with Wade Wilson, and Joe Baker, and Frank Pollock. They felt that there was something not happening there and that they were going to go out. So I do think a shakeup was necessary. There seemed to be just too many problems with the coaches. So I really don't see they had much choice. The question now is, did they go far enough?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think we're going to get to that in a few minutes, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But,
yeah, I want to agree with you there. I do think the shakeup was necessary, and I do understand what you were saying. Like Matt Eberflus, he had an offer to, I think, go to the San Francisco 49ers the year prior, and they didn't let him out of his contract to go do that. And so it was only a matter of time before he wanted to go. You talk about Frank Pollock. There's some tea leaf, just type of information where a lot of people felt that Frank Pollock was a little in over his head. Then there was, the wide receivers coach, Derek Dooley. he did not really get along very well back in the day when the great offensive line coach that's now in Washington, his name skips Callahan. They didn't get along very well, and there was also some talk about how Derek Dooley wasn't necessarily pushing his wide receivers very, very much. And I think that getting a young upstart like Sanjay Lal might change that for them. And I think they needed to change some of those things out. So I think you're absolutely correct on that. I think that they had some coaching hires that they just needed to make, and that they wanted to get better at those positions that relatively you can make the case that the position coaches are in charge of that room, and every position that they are going to be making changes at are places where the Cowboys kind of failed in a lot of ways this past season.
Yeah, I'm particularly curious about with Pollock leaving. I wish I knew who was really driving the Chaz Green experiment.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe Pollock was standing on the table a little bit more for Chaz Green than we might be aware, and that might be part of why he's gone. Or he may be just getting scapegoated over that. Yeah. And as for the wide receivers, given the fact that they're still trying to figure out how to get things working smoothly with Dez and Dak, as well as get a little better production out of the others and the whole Dak-friendly thing, I think wide receivers was another place where there was a really great reason to make a change. You know?
Absolutely.
We don't know all the story.
Yeah.
But I think they're headed kind of in the right direction.
Oh, I do too. I think at wide receiver, I've always said this. I've said this for a couple of years, and I think especially you saw it in 2017. I like what Dez Bryant can do. I know that Dez Bryant is not necessarily the most polished route runner, is what people have always said about him, but he's running decent routes. It's not that big of a problem that many people think, and he's got sure hands. I don't think it's a disconnect as much with Dak and Dez as much as I think Dez is the only guy on the field that Dak trusts. Because if you look at Terrence Williams is going to take the ball and run horizontally, not run up the field. He's shown that he's going to fumble the ball at times. I don't think that you can really trust Terrence Williams. I think Cole Beasley was bracketed so well this year by other defenses, knowing that Cole Beasley was the one other guy that Dak trusted. So I believe that teams just said, no, we're going to give you Dez Bryant because we know as a volume receiver, he can catch some volume, but he's not really about that. He's about game-changing plays, not necessarily about that. And I feel that the Cowboys have never really had a complement of receivers that really complement the things that Dez Bryant is able to do.
Yeah, and the idea is to become what? Dak-friendly.
Dak-friendly.
And I think this is going to be a really big part of it, is trying to do what you heard used a lot, referring to Peterson, put people in a position to succeed. And that works on both ends of the equation, both Dak and the wide receivers. I think that there's a lot better job that can be done of that.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to get into the discussion that is going around on Twitter today, which is about the fact that Doug Peterson has won a Super Bowl a couple of years into his head coaching career, and the Cowboys are staying pat at the top. We'll be back with Tom Ryle from Blogging the Boys here in just a moment. And we are back with the Brews and the Boys podcast with Tom Ryle from Blogging the Boys, my colleague over there for many years here. And we're into the coaching conversation. And today, one of the most popular opinions is about how aggressive the Eagles staff was compared to how the Cowboys kind of go conservatively. So I want to ask Tom Ryle, because he is the residential BTB expert on Jason Garrett, and he is another Jason Garrett disciple like I am. So as that resident Jason Garrett disciple, explain why the Cowboys are sticking with Garrett at head coach, and why it's maybe not always the smartest idea to just start firing people.
Well, so many people want to just go right into the whole X's and O's things and put all that, on the head coach and what plays are called when during a game. And I think that's not really understanding what the head coach does. That's why the offensive coordinator is the big question, I think, for the Cowboys going forward. That's going to be what's going to make or break how Scott Linehan does, actually. Garrett's job is, from a broader perspective, he has two things he has to do. One is to maintain the faith of the owner and management, which in the Cowboys' case is pretty much one and the same person, and he has to maintain the trust of the locker room. Clearly, he's got Jerry Jones's vote of confidence, at least for another year. Jones has apparently decided that the problem is not Jason Garrett, and that Garrett can be the guy to lead them into another year to get the problem solved. And there's a lot of reason to think that. The two main things are 2014 and 2016. He was a very successful head coach in those 2 years, and he's had a couple of other years in between those, including, of course, last season, when there were some very weird other things going on. First, Tony Romo got injured, and the Cowboys were caught with absolutely no answers at backup quarterback. And then, of course, this past season, we had the whole Ezekiel Elliott saga, Jerry Jones, and an undeclared war with Roger Goodell, the other suspensions, and I just have a feeling that that things never were really right inside the Star. So hopefully we're going to see things get turned around. At least we have to really hope that they do.
I was going to say I agree with you there. I agree with you there because I think people don't take that into consideration a lot, and they don't want to hear about excuses. They want to tell us that, oh, well, the Eagles dealt with injuries and they dealt with all that. Yeah, but they didn't deal with perhaps one of the biggest legal battles ever hanging over their entire locker room for as long as it did, halfway into the season, where they didn't know whether 1 week or the other if they were going to have Ezekiel Elliott or not. We had so many podcasts that we did from Brews and the Boys of just saying, Zeke's playing this week. Okay, Zeke's playing this week. Now maybe he's not going to play. So I think that really, there's no other way that you can sit there and say that did not have an effect on every single person in the locker room, from the head coach on down to the water boy. It just, everybody there was affected by the Ezekiel Elliott things and the injuries that they had at their all-pro positions and stuff. Yeah, if you want to sit there and say, well, Eagles did this and the Cowboys didn't, yeah, okay, well then I'll just readily admit the Eagles have better depth, and that's why they did a better job there, and the Cowboys have a lot of things to figure out. But I wanted to say, with what you were saying about the coaches and saying about Scott Linehan and things like that, do you believe that they made the right changes to the right positions, and do you believe that they should have kept both coordinators, or do you have a different belief on that matter?
I think that on the defensive side, I think they did a good job since they went out and got Chris Richard. I think he is going to be huge. I think he is essentially stepping into the Eberflus role of being the defensive coordinator in waiting, and I'm just all on board with that. I think he's going to have a tremendous effect on the secondary and the passing defense, the pass defense. I hope I'm not proven wrong, but I think that was the most exciting move of all so far in the coaching ranks. Now, Linehan, and to a certain extent Garrett, have just been given a year to prove that they do know how to do this still.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone likes to talk about the hot seat. I don't think there's an NFL coach in the league that would not be in a tenuous situation under bad enough circumstances.
Yeah.
Some people are going to get a lot more leeway, like Bill Belichick. But there are most other coaches, if they just have a team that falls apart and you can't really point to a good reason for it, or you simply don't want to accept that as a good enough reason, they could be gone at any time. You also have coaches like Jeff Fisher that you can't figure out why he's still around. And, we all saw what happened once they brought in another head coach. I believe is that McVay out in San Francisco?
McVay, coach of the year.
With the Rams.
Yeah.
Got coach of the year because he knows how to coach a quarterback. As it turns out, apparently, most people in the NFL know how to handle quarterbacks better than Fisher because he also had,
Vince Young.
Of course, had Foles, couldn't do anything with him. And he had the guy in Minnesota that came in. What was the name of the guy?
He had Case Keenum, but if you think about before that,
Case Keenum.
Tom, he had Vince Young too, in Tennessee.
Yeah, so I saw a thing that his before the 2016 season, his quarterback room was Foles, Keenum, and Goff. And come on.
Yeah, you have three quarterbacks that are starting quarterbacks in the NFL that all did well in 2017, a year after you're gone.
Yeah. So anyway, you can't say that Garrett's like that, and he's got a winning record. People just act like he's got some horrible losing statistic, and no, he just hasn't been able to break through. And to a large extent, that's just because twice when things were really going well, they ran into Aaron F. Rodgers. And
yeah.
Aaron
F. Rodgers. Tom knows that we've changed the platform here, and we can't use as many curse words as we like to, but you could take that for what you want. Tom Ryle is giving it right to you. Okay, so that is totally correct. And if we wouldn't be Brews and the Boys if I didn't do this here. Okay, so we're starting on number 2. But I want to get back into some of the things you were saying. So you were talking about the coordinators there, and you were talking about Chris Richard, and I think that the Cowboys could have moved on and got a defensive coordinator if they wanted to, but I think they did the right thing in having Marinelli come back for 1 year because honestly, I don't see a lot of things that happened there. I think Marinelli did a pretty good job with what he was given with all the rookies and things on the defensive backfield. But I want to say the Scott Linehan thing, a lot of people wanted to make a change there. And you just said perfectly that they didn't make a change because they are going to give them that 1 more year. So when Jerry Jones says that these coaching hires are not short-term and that he believes in Garrett for the long term, I think that you're basically saying that, people need to read between the lines there and say that, yeah, we'll work on that right now. We are all in for Garrett and Linehan and Marinelli. We will see where it takes us at the end of the 2018 season, and then we will reevaluate that. Is that what you would say that is ringing true here?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be for the long haul. If the Cowboys say get to at least to the NFC Championship game, then everything's going to be all rainbows and unicorns. And if the team has another bad, disappointing year, especially if they don't have something that they can really point to as like the entire Ezekiel Elliott mess, then there'll be a lot of more changes coming. And I think the one guy that's really got to prove himself is Linehan, and if Linehan fails, he could easily be taking Garrett down with him.
Absolutely. I think you're correct there. And I know that you said that you were excited about Chris Richard because you think he is the defensive coordinator in waiting. What do you think, though, which hire that they made, or which maybe it's just somebody they kept around that you kind of look at and say to yourself, okay, this guy gives me a little bit of trepidation for 2018?
Oh, I think you can probably guess. Is Kellen Moore really ready to be an NFL quarterback coach?
Yeah.
Now, I think he is going to be a very good coach soon. The question, I guess, is going to be, what does he really have to accomplish for the Cowboys this year? And this is where there's a lot of speculation here. I think they're looking at him as getting a lot of on-the-job training to get him ready for the future, because when it comes down to it, I think the real quarterback coach for the Cowboys the past 2 years has been Jason Garrett, and Scott Linehan has probably been about as involved as Wade Wilson was.
Yeah, exactly. I said in my column this week about Kellen Moore, I said that, I really don't think your playing career has any justification on whether you could be a good coach or not, because Todd Haley, he was the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He had been an assistant with the Cowboys. He never played a game of football, not high school, not nothing. He just didn't play football. He just liked football, and he became very smart about it and got into the business. But yeah, I think you're on the money there. Kellen Moore is definitely someone that gives you trepidation just because he does have such little experience, and the experience he does have is not necessarily rose-colored and making you feel great about it. But I do say that it's not like you said, Jason Garrett is the quarterback's coach, because this is Jason Garrett's job on the line if things don't go well. With Dak Prescott especially.
Yeah, that pretty much sums that up. Yeah, and we'll just have to see. The other hires, Ben Bloom has got some history with the team. I don't feel bad about that. Keith O'Quinn, as special teams coordinator, the team seems to have a lot of faith in him. So, we'll just have to see. But they don't scare me. More, I just kind of have to see how that works out.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to thank Tom Ryle for joining us here, talking about the coaching staff hires. Tom Ryle is actually going to be on our next episode that's going to be coming out later in the week about just the rumor mill with the Cowboys and how everything's been shaken out. Tom, we appreciate you coming on today to talk about these coaching hires. And I guess it's just like you said, if the Cowboys somehow everything's fine right now and they're going to say, hey, everything's okay, we're going to be just fine. But if it doesn't work out, they have every reason to look at that again next season. And we want to thank you guys for joining us today. Please remember to follow us on Twitter at Brews and the Boys. Follow me at Mr. Sisemore, and please follow Tom Ryle at Tom Ryle BTB. We will be back later in the week to discuss the rumor mill about the Dallas Cowboys, everything that you can see going on and what people have just been talking about over the last couple of weeks since the season has been over for the Cowboys since pretty much January 1st or before then there. And we just want to ask you to go to facebook.com/Brews and the Boys and check us out there, following Timmy Two-Step at TIMMYIISTEP. And we will be back later on in the week with Tom Ryle again for part 2 of the Cowboys offseason and what's been going on and what we've been keeping our ears to the ground and listening so far. Take care, everybody.
Now this is podcasting.